Welcome back. You're watching Cheche. Today's guests are the Director of the National Counter-Terrorism Center, Ambassador Martin Kimani, and the Chair of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly, Dungu Ivenji. Some of the messages coming in from our viewers. KDF is a professional and efficient military. We will support our soldiers for good or ill. Staying true to Kenya is our patriotic core. What I think is that the Kenya Air Force needs to be supplied with better equipment. Ground troops need not relax. Kenyans must not give up. Leaving Somalia now is yielding to the enemy, and that came from Pastor Elijah in Machakos. I wish the CIC armed will consider doing all-out operations to liquidate Al-Shabaab, then pull out and leave Somalia to take charge. I would like to suggest that the army be in persistent attacks towards Al-Shabaab, let them not just wait to retaliate. And so there's a very strong call for Kenya not to retreat in the face of these sorts of attacks. And we're talking during the break about, you know, at what point do we say, is it worth being in Somalia? Givenj, what do you think?
Yeah, the calls for Kenya not to retreat are valid. Kenya will not retreat. Kenya, as has been pointed out by many observers, we have a professional military organization, one of the finest institutions in the Republic of Kenya. When we are in Somalia, and this is what we are saying, even as the political class and political leadership, we want to ensure that our strategic objectives are ensured and observed and maintained. We must secure the country, we must protect our citizens, and ensure that our neighbors are stabilized. When that observer was talking about the Kenya Air Force, it's a very poignant point. Why? Because AMISOM does not have air capacity. We also do not have a maritime component to the AMISOM peace mission. I saw a tweet from somebody asking me, how does Al-Shabaab get arsenal or get supplies? The obvious answer is from the sea, because we do not have sufficient capability in AMISOM to patrol and have a naval component to barricade or blockade the sea routes where they get the supplies. And this is what I'm saying. We are in a situation where the international community now has to say they are fully committed to this, so that we can ensure that we can effectively wipe out Al-Shabaab once and for all. Without that, Kenya must now start looking at alternatives, how we can engage you know, with a coalition of people who want to work with us in a campaign to completely eradicate Al-Shabaab north of Gedo and further north into Somalia, until we can have a situation where we know that the bases where they operate from, the places where they resupply are completely decimated, and they can melt into the communities as they did before when we went and
in fact, one of our viewers asked that question. I'll put that to you. It's important that the panel should address the fact that the majority of the Shabaab are Kenyan citizens, and that came from Ken in Meru.
No, I don't think the majority of Al-Shabaab are Kenyan citizens, but I think the questioner's point is that there are Kenyans in Al-Shabaab.
Indeed.
The fact is that Al-Shabaab has tried to radicalize more Kenyans, that today they and their sympathizers and supporters are actively trying to get more and more young Kenyans into their ranks. And I think that is the greatest danger we need to face up to here domestically. As KDF pursues the military targets in Somalia, our intelligence services and our police service here are focused on this radicalization threat. And you saw about 2 weeks ago, there was a teacher who was jailed for 20 years, and that is courtesy of the new laws that came in and enabled us to be able to take on these crimes. But as I said, beyond that, we really do have, as Kenyans, to be able to look side to side and try and understand what people around us are saying, especially to our young people. Because if we don't, there cannot be a policeman next to every Kenyan who is being radicalized. So we really do need to actually take that comment seriously and come together to actually resist this attempt to radicalize our people.
Probably what you need to tell us about the Kimani and Mheshimiwa Givenji, and what Kenyans are concerned about is the care that the families that have lost their loved ones, because we have seen victims of terrorism being left on their own. We have a case of Garissa University, one of the students from Muranga who got paralyzed. She has been here.
Was in the news actually.
Yeah, she has been lying here at the spinal injury unit, and she needed like about 4 million or so, or 2 million, to be taken to India for treatment, specialist treatment. But there is no help coming. She lost her mother, who suffered depression out of what the daughter went through, and now we have
missed the burial because her place is in a remote area which she couldn't access.
In a wheelchair.
Okay, so you've made the point. How are we supporting KDF?
Okay. No, the KDF has a very established system of management for soldiers who have deceased in the line of duty. Of course, there's the repatriation of the deceased remains at the expense of KDF back to their home areas. They have, of course, the pension systems within the services. If a soldier is killed in the line of duty, they have a system of pensions.
What about this national mourning? Because the mood of the country at the moment is a very somber one. We're grieving.
We grieve in solidarity with the KDF. But a soldier's primary function and duty in the line of service is to protect and defend the country and the constitution and the commander-in-chief. And the possibility of dying in the line of duty is always part of that equation. And in fact, when KDF soldiers die in the line of duty, it is an act of heroism. They are celebrated as heroes within the KDF. They have a duty and a tradition of lowering service flags within the regiments, and this is part of the military tradition. So they have their set of honors within the military framework, which are continue to be observed. And the issue of national mourning should be carried as a consciousness by Kenyans, but not an act of 4 days flags flying at half-mast. That doesn't happen anywhere in the world. So the military have the tradition of lowering their flags, flying them at half-mast for specific regiments where those the troops were drawn. So they have the traditions of observance, of honor. Which they're undertaking as we speak.
Okay, I'm under pressure to wind up.
A little bit.
Okay, and so as you do, I want you to address this question, please. Do we have a timeline within which we're operating in Somalia? Unfortunately, we may be reduced to policing Somalia too long, which is a duty of the Somali government. Benson, hi, I read non-commitments on the side of Somali government even after KDF leaves Somalia. If our aim is to Linda Inchi, why not bring our soldiers along the border between Kenya and Somalia? Please address that as you make
Very quickly, I serve with some KDF officers at the center, and they've been coming to me and saying, we have hung our battle fatigues up. They're usually in suits, and we're ready. They're retired KDF soldiers now who are saying, please, we're ready if we're to be sent. That's a spirit that's there amongst the KDF family. So every Kenyan can be rest assured that Al-Shabaab is going to receive back and be paid back in full, plus extra for what they've done. Now, on the issue of
Somalia's capacity, the government's capacity and intentions.
We gave the Somali government, its predecessor was born here in Nairobi, through Kenyan efforts to allow Somalis to come together to negotiate amongst themselves. They went to Somalia. We went and offered them a chance at stability. We do need them to strengthen their efforts to take full control of their country, because Kenya is not interested in staying in Somalia. We're there to reduce the threat to ourselves and to the region and to the international community. So the moment we're able to degrade Al-Shabaab to where it is not a threat to us and it is not a threat to the region, we will not stay 1 minute longer. But we have to be ready. But when does that
time come? We could be doing this for the next 20, 40 years.
We have to be ready to do it as long as there's a danger to Kenya. Kenya is going to continue beyond my life and beyond my children's life. So we will stay there as long as they threaten our country in an existential sense.
That doesn't sound very optimistic as we wind up. It doesn't, given that it took 20 years, close to 20 years, to give birth to the transitional federal government. And if we're talking about waiting for a government that takes its responsibility as a good neighbor seriously, given the singular act of hostility that you described earlier, Gizenji, will be waiting for a long time.
Well, you know, we're committed to supporting Somalia and the Somali national government. We've demonstrated that, you know, ad infinitum. But don't forget, it was 25 years of lawlessness. They had 25 years of no government. So 25 years of putting the government together is not a bad trade-off. And if we can take another 5 years or 10 years to stabilize the country and ensure that peace and security reigns and Al-Shabaab is completely defeated, that is a good investment. Because ultimately we want a partner, a neighbor who is stable and we can work with in developing our countries. But I want to speak immediately to the rhetoric, the narrative that Al-Shabaab wants to push in the public domain, that they've bloodied our nose, they've hammered KDF, and we're now cowering and running you know, for the shadows. Nothing can be further from the truth. We have, I also interact with several KDF recruits, even from my own constituency, young Kenyans. The queues for people who want to be recruited into KDF are growing. People are saying they want to join. The ones who are already in barracks are saying they want to be sent to the front. Kenyans, the KDF morale is very strong, and they're ready to go and fight for this country. And that is the support that we need to give the KDF. We need to stand with them and thank them for their service and for their patriotism, their duty, and willing to die for us so that we can continue to be free. So that part I think is important for Kenyans to realize. But at the same time, the weaknesses in the Somali national government in you know, administering the areas that we liberate needs to be supported. We need the international community to come in and help them so that the areas that we liberate, they can come and administrate and create structures for administration so that we can be able to pull out. Without that, we need to engage further.
I'll take those two as final comments from both our guests today. But Waweru and David, my apologies. We've been reflecting on the attacks on the KDF in Somalia, and we've come up with strengthening of the AMISOM mandate. Possible extra-lateral, you know, if you want to call it, action beyond the AMISOM mandate, communication, strengthened communication coming up from KDF, political orientation. Is there anything else that we should be thinking about doing as we, you know, mourn the loss of KDF soldiers?
Well, first of all, I think that we need not be pushed into this logic and ideology that retreat is equal to surrender in the case of Somalia. I think this narrative is being driven into people, and therefore it becomes a chest-thumping exercise rather than a realistic, rational assessment of the situation in Somalia, our deployment there, and the viability of our mission. From where I sit, I think short of just clearing the whole of Somalia and declaring it territory land, so anybody who is found there is a terrorist, there's no way, I think, you're going to claim that you've eliminated terrorism or the Somali threat. This, to me, is a third world war unfolding before us in the form of terrorism. Rest versus terrorists. And as you can see, it's mutating from ISIS in Syria, all over, Ouagadougou being hit, Boko Haram, Somalia. You know, let's not deceive ourselves with bravado and say that we're going to insert ourselves to the front line of this arena of this war and be the face of it, which I think we must try to think strategically out of while we guard our national interests and see how long our mission in Somalia can viably last. I hear people saying as long as, that's what I'm saying, as long as when? Because we must change tact based on. But David,
you talk about being a frontline country. Burkina Faso had nothing to do with terrorism and found itself hit for the first time.
That's what I'm saying. So this war is really multifaceted. Right. I mean, it's not going to be that you're going to clear Somalia, for example, because Somalia is just the extension, is an arena for terrorism, which is a global thing happening and mutating all over the place. So for us to pretend that we're going to clean out Somalia as KDF or as Kenya is, I think, taking on an assignment that is too huge. I mean, the Americans withdrew, but they didn't surrender. They're active in Somalia, but they're fighting in different formats. So we have to be strategic, and let's not just whip Kenyans into saying, okay, if you retreat, we're not saying retreat now because we've been hit. Every war has upsets and at different points. The calls for us to reevaluate Somalia mission came before this heat, and there'll be hits and there'll be wins and there'll be victory and there'll be losses. So we must find an appropriate time within which to deploy our strategy. That's my word.
Okay, thank you very much. And so our time is up, and we thank you for your time here on Cheche this morning, for the reflections given that the country is grieving the loss of the soldiers in Somalia. Today's guests have been the Director of the National Counterterrorism Center, Ambassador Martin Kimani. We've also had the Chair of the Defense and Foreign Relations Committee in the National Assembly, Ndungu Givenji. Our thanks to our panelists, Awaru Mburu and David Makali, and we thank you for watching and engaging with us here. Once again, our condolences to the bereaved families and our thoughts and prayers with the soldiers who are injured and still missing.